evening and welcome to the Greg Thompson Sports Show, where tonight we are going to whip around the NFL Week 15 action, recapping all the games, how they in fact impact the playoff races, and specifically your Buffalo Bills. So we will dive right in without further delay. But first, our big shout out to our sponsors, Underdog Fantasy. They have been fantastic. Fantastic producer Chris and I were just looking. Our cover one league. Right now, it looks like Dave Tilton of the Air Raid Hour is running away with it. Number two is our fantastic fantasy, content creator Chris Chouse, and number three is producer Chris. Chris Seth running away with the top three cash option there. So shout out to Chris and him being able to grab that. But without further ado, we will jump right in and go through the week's action. We will start with the Thursday night madness. This game didn't have a ton of impact on the playoff race, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it was ridiculously entertaining. Just a crazy performance overall. 63 points. If you set an NFL or a franchise record for a franchise with the history that the Raiders do, that's really means something. I know they've been embarrassing for a little while here, but setting a franchise record for an organization like them, that matters. That was interesting. In a game that did matter to the Buffalo Bills and to the playoff race, the Minnesota Vikings had a chance to be able to put this away and to win it. They had a 17-3 lead. You're going to hear a trend of that with a lot of these other games. They let the Bengals get back into this game. They had a chance, they were 3rd and 1 in overtime, and they did two Nick Mullins quarterback sneaks and got stuffed both times. Turn the ball over to the Bengals. They go down, kick a game-winning field goal. Gives the Bengals their 8th win. They're 8-6, tied with the Bills. But right now they are the 6th seed and the top team out of all the teams, the 4 teams that are tied at 8-6. They are right there with the tiebreakers as the 6th seed in the top out of those groups. Minnesota, that really hurt them, dropped them back, but the NFC has fewer teams, so they're still there as the 6th seed, even though they dropped to 7-7. That it didn't hurt them quite as much, but that one would have helped the other AFC squads if Minnesota could have held on. In a game that was kind of debatable on who it benefited to win in the short term, it actually benefited the Colts to win because the Steelers would have been higher in the tiebreaker order. So the Colts technically help with some of the tiebreakers later on, but I actually was rooting for the Steelers to be able to win this more so because of their remaining schedule. So I think this loss, when you combine that with the games that the Steelers have remaining, I think this pretty much eliminates the Steelers from any semblance of contention. Their remaining games, they play the Bengals next week. They play at the Seahawks and at the Ravens. I think that's at least 2 losses, if not 3. So I think the Steelers are going to be done. And the Colts, I think, are annoyingly a game squad. I think that they're going to be in the running here for a little bit longer. Their remaining games are at the Falcons, the Raiders, and the Texans. Now, the Texans will probably have CJ Stroud back. So the Bills are going to be rooting for the Falcons next week against the Colts. They look like they're going to be tough to knock out of this wild card group. So they have a schedule lined up to be able to keep stacking wins, and I don't think that seems that good, but they keep finding a way to win. In a game that did benefit the AFC and the Buffalo Bills, the Detroit Lions just boat raced the Denver Broncos. This was a complete blowout. It's 21-0 in the first half. They were able to put together just a dominant win. Jahmyr Gibbs looked fantastic. Sam Laporta looked fantastic. 3 touchdowns for Sam Laporta. And you now see that the Denver Broncos, in their win streak, they were getting a ton of turnover luck. They've stopped getting that turnover luck now. They've crashed back down to earth. It's not something that I expect them to immediately flip a switch and turn back around. Their remaining schedule, they do have the Patriots, Chargers, and Raiders, so they have an opportunity. But getting their 7th loss definitely hurts. They would need to finish 3-0 to be able to give themselves a chance to get back into this. They do have some okay tiebreakers, but it's not something I expect them to be able to make good on. There was a moment where I thought maybe the Jets were going to be able to compete with the Dolphins. The Dolphins had some weird injuries early on. Tyreek Hill didn't play in this game, but the Jets are just terrible. Zach Wilson started, but wasn't able to finish. Trevor Siemian came in. He threw 2 interceptions. The Dolphins had some defensive scores. They, just controlled the ball the entire time. There was a bomb to Jalen Waddle at one point, but they pretty much just controlled the ball, held it from them. The Jets could never get anything going. This is actually one of the Dolphins' better defensive performances. But a game that, we were obviously rooting for the Jets to be able to win. The Dolphins, on the other hand, have a tough slate coming up here. They play the Cowboys next week, who just got embarrassed, obviously, by the Buffalo Bills, going to be playing very angry. They then play the Ravens and then the Bills. They have the hardest finishing schedule of any team in the NFL. They are 10-4, so they bank their 10th win. With those 10 wins, they do have some solid wins. They're already 7-3 in conference. So the worst they could fall to is 7-5 in the AFC for their conference record. I think that's going to be good enough. I think they're already going to be in the playoffs, but the division is no longer a guarantee unless they are able to beat Dallas and Baltimore to avoid that week 18 from mattering as much as it may matter. Another game that mattered tremendously for the AFC playoff race, the Tennessee Titans. The Titans were up on the Texans in this game. They had a chance. They went up 13-0. They let Houston kind of claw back in with a bunch of field goals. They, went back up by a touchdown. They had opportunities to close this out. And good on Case Keenum. He went down and got them in position. The Titans, both these defenses made way more plays than their offenses did. This was an ugly game. But the Titans certainly had a chance to win this and to be able to really help put the Texans away. The Texans getting this win, in this game, they're missing CJ Stroud, they're missing Nico Collins, they're missing Tank Dell. You just really have to give it to DeMeco Ryan, just an incredibly well-coached team to be able to put themselves into this position to continue to bank wins. With all those guys missing, they're 8-6. They have the same record as the Buffalo Bills. They should be really proud of what they put together here. It's been a really impressive run. They remain alive in this stretch. They are going to be a challenge to be able to deal with. They play the Browns next. That's an interesting game that matters for both teams from a tiebreaker standpoint. The Browns could basically eliminate them if they give them that seventh loss, with what's remaining. They play the Titans again, and then they play the Colts. So the Colts, Browns, and Texans are all vying for those positions, and they play each other. So that's where you're going to get some of these interesting tiebreakers and interesting scenarios because each of the teams that all need to win, some of them are playing each other. So one of them's got to lose. So we'll see where that one goes. It's going to be really, really interesting to watch. On the AFC side, a couple of games here. The Buccaneers put themselves in interesting position to be able to snag a playoff spot. Right now, they have the tiebreakers to be winning the NFC South. So Baker Mayfield showing up big. They were in control of this game pretty much the entire time. Rachaad White has played fantastic. They finally started to use Chris Godwin today. The Packers were kind of the darlings there for a moment and now have stumbled back-to-back weeks, really hurt themselves when they had a chance to really grab hold of a wild card spot and now look like they're going to be on the outside looking in. A team that's remaining alive, the New Orleans Saints beat the New York Giants and gave Tommy DeVito a loss here after he had his nice run going there for a while. They are also 7-7, tied. They would be in the playoffs on the outside looking in. They would lose the tiebreaker to Minnesota and the Rams. So they lose the tiebreaker for the division with Tampa and Minnesota and the Rams for the 6th and 7th wild card spots. All those teams have 3 games up on their 3 games back from the Cowboys. So the Cowboys have nothing to play for down the stretch here. They're going to be behind the Eagles, but ahead of all those other wild card teams, pretty much locked into the 5th seed. And then there's going to be 3 or 4 teams playing for that final 2 wild card spots. So we'll see where that goes in the NFC. Another game that had no real bearing overall other than hurting the Falcons, the Carolina Panthers got their 2nd win of the season. I was talking with producer Chris before the show. What is Arthur Smith doing? They dropped to 6-8. They lost to the Panthers. You can't use your weapons that you have. This to me looks like the next coach fired, in my opinion. I look forward to a real offensive coach getting a hold of this talent and going down there, maybe trading for Justin Fields. Maybe they'll go get Justin Fields from Chicago and put him down there in the turf and have some fun with the offensive weapons they have there. Just a mess. In a game that was intra-conference that did affect the playoff race, another one here. The Bears had a double-digit lead. At one point, the Bears were up 17-7, and it was into the 4th quarter. They had control of this game. They should have been able to pull out the win, but the Cleveland Browns come back. are able to tie it up. Didn't even need to go to overtime. Ended up getting the ball back and winning in regulation. The Cleveland Browns are 9-5. They are a virtual lock for the playoffs now. They do have some tough remaining games down the stretch here, but they've already banked 9 wins. They only need one more, and they play the Texans, the Jets, and the Bengals. The Browns are a lock for the playoffs, and Joe Flacco is going to lead them there. And that is crazy to say out loud. I just don't see a realistic scenario where they lose all 3 of those final games. I think they're going to get to 10 games here, and they already have some pretty good tiebreakers because they already are 6-3 in conference. So they're going to end the season on a winning record in the NFC or in the AFC. So it's going to be tough for them to get knocked all the way out here. And could even make it if they go 0-3. So I think they'll get at least one win, if not multiple there. And the Cleveland Browns are somehow going to make the playoffs this year. It's just crazy. Another one that, yeah, I guess we could have been rooting for. The Patriots actually hung with the Chiefs. The Chiefs let the Patriots score 17 points, and they had an opportunity at one point here. The Patriots were winning 10-7 before the Chiefs kind of pulled away and took control of this game. So again, the Chiefs are still getting things figured out, but avoid losing an embarrassing game to the Patriots. The Patriots lose their game and remain in the spot that they are with right now pretty firm control of the second pick in the draft. They'll be competing with the Cardinals to see who ends up with the second or the third pick as they work their way through this. Couple more games that didn't really affect a whole lot. The 49ers smashed the Cardinals. Huge game for Christian McCaffrey. When healthy, the 49ers clearly look like the best team in football. We'll see if they can remain healthy. A couple guys, Purdy had to go out of the game today. McCaffrey had to go out of the game today. Both of them went back in. But they're basically just a contest of who can stay healthy and are they able to remain in the position that they're in. Similarly, the Rams had a game with the Commanders. The Commanders tried to come roaring back, but the Rams were able to hold on. They go to 7-7, and if the playoffs started today, they would be the 7th seed in the NFC and would be heading to Philadelphia to play the Eagles. So the Rams have been able to remain competitive here after a whole lot of injuries dug a hole for them early on. They look like they're trending the right way and are going to be able to remain in firm playoff contention. The game we have going on tonight, we are talking here at halftime of Sunday Night Football. We have the Jaguars playing the Ravens. The Ravens are up 10-0. That is what the Bills want to root for the Ravens to beat the Jaguars, knock the Jaguars back to 8-6 into the muck of the AFC South. And tomorrow night on Monday Night Football is an NFC matchup with the Eagles and the Seahawks. That doesn't really affect a whole lot. We are going to go in here and flip over to our friends at the New York Times, looking at the playoff odds. Matter of fact, I'll show you real quick here. If the playoffs were to start today, the Bills would still be on the outside looking in. At they moved up from the 11th seed to the 9th seed, but again, they now control their destiny. If they're able to win the remaining games, they would pass some of these. And I showed you many of these other teams play each other, so some of them are going to get losses. The Bills now control their own destiny. Next week playing the Chargers, and the week after playing the Patriots. And as you can see, they are in a position here. If they simply win their remaining games, they will be in the playoffs. It's very, very likely if they're able to simply beat the Patriots and the Chargers, they will go in with an awful lot of things in their favor going into that final game. You can see here tonight, this game between the Ravens and the Jaguars could be an extra 4 points in the Bills' favor for their playoff odds. And you see some of the other games next week we'll be rooting for, obviously, the Bills to beat the Chargers, but we'll be rooting for the Steelers to beat the Bengals because now that the Steelers look like they're going to be out, we want them to beat the teams we're competing with. The Falcons against the Colts is one of the biggest non-Bills games because it's an NFC team. That's an 8-point swing. We'll be rooting for that one pretty heavily. We'll be rooting for the Browns to knock out the Texans because it looks like the Browns are a virtual lock. We might as well let them continue to win and pull away. Again, the Buccaneers playing the Jags and being an NFC versus AFC team, pull them further down into that mess so that there's no risk of 2 AFC South teams being able to get into the playoffs. So we'll go through some of those scenarios. Again, the Cowboys against the Dolphins, that's a big one because it can make that final Week 18 game a opportunity. If the Cowboys are to win that, all of a sudden we have a chance to host a wild card game. So then we'd be going into that final game where the winner basically gets the division. And the loser, if we set some of those up, we'd even be in position where we don't even need to win out, and we almost already have the playoff spot locked up as we go into that final one. So a lot of good opportunities here. We'll go through some of those rooting scenarios. Make sure you're checking out some of the good stuff that Uber puts out here with his rooting interest article on cover1.net, and he shares those on Reddit as well. So make sure you're checking out some of those good things. Make sure you hit the like button, give us a rating, give us a review. It goes a long ways. Make sure to check out our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. If you use promo code cover1, they will match your first deposit up to $500. You can have a lot of fun being able to go through there. If you got knocked out of the playoffs, you can still draft a new team to be able to play around with this coming week, and be able to go through there and still have plenty of good things to be able to play for. But beyond behalf of fantastic producer Chris Seth, I am Greg Thompson. You've been listening to the Greg Thompson Sports Show, and we are out.